More heat on Republican Senator Mike Lee, who put out those terrible posts about this weekend's assassination. We reported on The Beat about that vitriol. Lee trafficking in conspiracy theories and his version of what he thinks is a joke or mockery of a brand new assassination with people murdered. Also, we have to note it's quite the descent from his past claims, Mike Lee, that Trump was the irresponsible one and he wouldn't endorse Trump in 2016 for those reasons, whereas now he has moved to the fringe right, or whatever you want to call it, right, or the bottom, going after the victims of an assassination and murder this weekend. So he'd courted that fringe and conspiracy theory attention with these posts over the weekend. Tonight, after outrage, he is backing down a little bit. Minnesota Senator Tina Smith confronting Lee there in a hallway, which senators know will be seen. Photos will be taken. That's a very public environment. She says she wanted to stand up to him on behalf of people that she and her colleagues knew who are dead this week, who are gone because of that political violence, which he clearly minimized and joked about. She then recounted that.
I wanted to speak to Senator Lee directly about the impact of what he had put out on social media, the impact it had on me, his colleague, and other people in Minnesota. He posted a picture of this assassin, presumably shortly before he killed my friend and a political leader in Minnesota. And I think it is important that people who have such a huge megaphone, like Senator Lee, think carefully about what they are doing and what impact it will have. Over 7 million people engaged with that social media tweet, and that is a power that he should be using to calm the storm and not to fuel the fire.
Everything she says checks out. She is using her role and power to try to counter the problem, but the problem is coming from within the United States Senate. And there are other better things that a Minnesota lawmaker could do this week as they prepare these funerals, these memorials, security, ongoing law enforcement actions. There's a lot to deal with after those horrific shootings this weekend. But she has to do this because to not confront it, she says, she feels, and seems pretty believable, would be to let it stand as her friend murdered is dishonored by her colleague that she's still supposed to work with. This is not normal times, and this is not normal or acceptable conduct. Other people who are used to plenty of hardball, tough politics and name-calling and all the rest also found this over the line. One of her aides wrote a letter to Lee's aides, so that's sort of the teams that work with each other, right? The Senate is still a set of offices where people work with each other, telling their counterparts, I pray that if, God forbid, you ever find yourself having to deal with anything similar, you find yourselves on the receiving end of the kind of grace and compassion that Senator Mike Lee could not muster. The letter continuing with this question that you might recognize, quote, have you absolutely no conscience, no decency? It's a fair question when you're mocking people who were just murdered as the country and their friends and family learn and grieve about it. The question also echoes a very famous one put to another fringe senator who ultimately did flame out after a lot of damage, Joe McCarthy, when, during one of his vaunted hearings, he was asked, have you no decency at long last? Have you no decency, sir? And that time, without the internet or X to post and boost and monetize and profit off this sort of grim murder joking, but at that time, the nation did also face its own version of politically fueled conspiracy theories that not only harm people, but in the case of those Army McCarthy hearings and the other sort of red baiting, they shut down entire careers and lives for years. Some people went to prison for doing little more than offering brave dissent against that discredited red baiting. So that question, have you no decency, echoes right now. As for Republican Mike Lee, who said he used to oppose Donald Trump because of the irresponsible statements he made and now is what he is, I don't need to add adjectives. You can decide for yourself what you think he is. But for his part, Mike Lee is on the run.
Do you regret your tweet? Do you stand by the post that you made on X?
Have you had a productive conversation about that post? Was that what the senator wanted to speak to you about?
He can hear them. He made these posts to get attention. Now he apparently cannot handle it. Senator Lee can try to run from the press and run from his own scandal, but he's ultimately running from what he said, from what he chose and chooses to say. There is wisdom even in hard times like this. Bob Marley put it very simply. You're running and you're running and you're running away, but you can't run away from yourself. So if Mike Lee doesn't have the words to explain himself, what he said, did, and stands for, that's a Mike Lee problem. And there will be people with cameras and memories to follow him around if this is how he uses, or, as his Minnesota counterpart says, misuses his power and reach. Days later, he has, under this pressure, deleted those posts, but he hasn't spoken out or apologized or explained anything. It is a lesson that everyone knows all the way back to the schoolyard, even if we wish some of our politicians and senators aimed and lived above the standards of the schoolyard. But some of the loudest bullies, or today they call them trolls, they're so loud, talking behind people's back, telling jokes about people who were murdered. And then when you confront them, the bullies become the quietest of the bunch. We'll all be waiting for Mike Lee. When you look at this, where I said, is Mike Lee to the right of MAGA fringe conspiracy, or is he to the bottom, or is he subterranean when it comes to basic decency? What does it tell you that on the one hand he deleted, so he wanted attention, he got more than his share, but he still hasn't addressed this as any decent person would?
Well, this is the thing, Ari. Mike Lee is a coward. I mean, I'm just going to say that. You are a coward. If you're going to say something like that, then you need to either stand 10 toes down and explain why you said it, or actually make a public apology. And what he confronted, which you mentioned before about trolls and bullies, when Congressman Smith actually went up to him, he was dealing with the say it to my face energy that many of these Republican trolls don't face, right? Someone actually saying, okay, go ahead, say that to me while we're all in mourning. And he couldn't do it. And I think that was an important step on her behalf, but it's also a reflection of the lack of conviction that he has in anything he says. He's used to just being able to throw rocks and hide his hand, and this time he couldn't. But there's too many Republicans who operate that way and are able to hide because they're not confronted.
Well, Jason, some people say, what you refer to, say it to my face, some people say, do it again. You know, do it again. Come up here and do it right now. Right,
exactly. Pull up then, right? And he's not that person. And I would love to think that he will have learned his lesson from this, but I don't think so. And if it's not him, it's Jim Jordan. If it's not him, it's Marjorie Taylor Greene. It has been an attitude of the Republican Party for a good 15 years now to just sort of say these things, hide when confronted, right? And then find an opportunity to say it again and hide in the right-wing echo chamber.